Welcome into a Thursday, February 27th edition of Daily Faceoff Live, coming to you live on the Daily Faceoff YouTube, where we are looking for your inbox questions. Drop those in for Frank with the hashtag AskDFO. The show, as always, brought to you by Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary until Bet365. Frank, 8 days until the deadline, and again, 4 Nations break, it screwed me up. It does not feel like we're 8 days away. Are you surprised at maybe how quiet things are?
No, I think things actually heated up in a big way on Wednesday. I think phones started buzzing, started hearing a lot more percolating, and frankly, wouldn't be surprised to see a trade in the next 24 to 48 hours or multiple.
That is what I like hearing, Frank. That's what I like hearing. We're going to talk.
We've reached the point in time where anytime my phone buzzes in the middle of the night, I'm waking up. And so last night, 2:48 a.m. Oh yeah, just some random post-game release from an AHL team. Thanks for that.
That's it. It is. Again, I do not envy the position you're in, because that's going to be your next 8 days here. We're going to talk with Jesse Montano in a little bit, but first we'll take a look back at some results from last night. It's our nightcap, and it's brought to you by JP Wiser's, proud to be the official whiskey of the NHL, offering Canadian hockey fans a premium drink choice to enhance every game night experience across the country. JP Wiser's, the official whiskey of game night. And Frank, listen, we don't need to talk about how good the Winnipeg Jets are. They win yet again. Connor Hellebuyck is unbelievable. 21-2-2 in his last 25 games. That is just like absolutely mind-blowing. But I want to talk about the team on the other side of that loss. It's a 5th straight defeat for the Ottawa Senators. And listen, nobody's going to sit here and blame them all too hard for losing to the red-hot Winnipeg Jets when you don't have 3 of your best forwards in Norris, Tkachuk, and Pinto in the lineup. But we talked earlier in the week about how all those teams in the middle of the Eastern Conference playoff push, you're a good 10 days from separating yourself, and you're a bad 10 days from putting yourself well behind the eight ball. The Sens are having a bad 10 days.
Yeah, and look, certainly doesn't help with the injury status, or guess cloud, you could say, covering them. Not 100% Brady Tkachuk, not 100% Linus Ullmark, and it's crunch time. And look, it feels like it's been that way all year, one thing after another for the Sens. I think one of the true feathers in their cap is that this year they've stuck with it, but now they need you. Now this is when you've got to find a way to break through. And I'm just real not curious or concerned. I'm wondering what the heck the Sens are going to do at this deadline. They're in no different of a position than the Detroit Red Wings. They've got to get in. They've got to have their players get a taste of this experience in the postseason. You've got to be able to sell to free agents or people on the trade market, hey, this is a destination. This is a place for you to come to have a chance to win. They have to get in. And you see the Red Wings kind of creating a little bit of separation here with, the stretch that they've had really kind of since Christmas to come all the way back from 15th place in the conference now into 7th. And what are the Sens going to do to keep pace with that? Do they need an additional defenseman? Do they need bottom 6 help? Do they need what is it on their list?
Maybe multiple things. And I'm going to ask you a question when we do our Canadian deadline talk in topic 4 here in a couple of minutes. But right now, again, the Sens, you're only 2 points back of the Blue Jackets. It's not all doom and gloom, but you kind of sit there now and you go, man, if we could have just ended this little 5-game losing streak at some point, we're sitting there in a playoff spot still, and every 2 points is so important right now. Let me ask you another one, Frank, just from the results last night. Jesse Montano, Guerrilla Sports, he's going to join us in a bit. The Avs beat the Devils 5-1 last night for New Jersey. Tomorrow's the last Friday of the month, which is typically when you and I do our Stanley Cup inner circle, outer circle. Are the Devils even in your outer circle anymore?
I don't think so. It's been a consistently poor stretch. They're a middling team in the East, and they've got top end talent, but where are you hanging your hat? It's not going to be on Jack Hughes to get yourself in and do damage, not after the 4 Nations face-off run that he had. So where is it that you're turning to say, hey, we've got elite talent? Yes. Do we have the depth to go with it? Probably not. Their defense and the way they've played has certainly been better. Their goaltending is better than it's been in the last 5 years. But if we're talking coin flips in the East and chances to break through in a wide open conference, the Devils aren't one of those teams where the odds would be shaded in their favor.
No. And again, it's game 60, so they have 22 games left, and no one's sitting here saying the Devils are going to miss the playoffs by any means, but you kind of start to look at the games in hand that they have and the point gap, and it's like, okay, if New York, the Rangers, were to win their games in hand, all of a sudden they're only 4 points back. If Columbus were to win their games in hand, they're only 2 points back of the New Jersey Devils. So that gap is starting to close up a little bit in the Metropolitan Division. The Devils got to get things sorted out pretty quickly here. Another team that could be active ahead of the deadline. Maybe touch on them in a bit with Brock Boeser as well. But first, Frank, 1,000 game milestones. We've had a handful of them pop up this year, and a bit of a unique story with both Braden and Luke Schenn now set to hit the milestone in the same season. Braden's about to do it and become the 407th player in league history. I went back. I couldn't find like a resource that would tell me all the brothers who have done it. So I went through all four.
There's 10.
There's 10.
10,
really?
Yeah, 10. They're the 10th set of siblings that will hit 1,000 games, and I believe the first to do it in the same season.
Yeah, that's again really, really cool. Yeah, I went through and I was like, okay, Sedin, Stalls, Koivus, and then my brain stopped working, so I gave up on the project.
Yeah.
But anyways, both these guys also have their names being floated out in the trade market a little bit here, Frank. So I guess maybe we can start with Luke because he's on the screen right now. Obviously hit that 1,000 game mark earlier this season. No trade protection, cap hit of $2.75 million. A guy who's won before and been on long playoff runs, but presumably loves it in Nashville. He signed on there. What do you make of Luke Schenn? Do you think there's a realistic shot he's dealt before the deadline?
Yeah, I think definitely more so of a possibility than his brother Braden. And I know there's been some talk, hey, there's teams out there that would like to unite both brothers. I think it's a bit of a long shot. I think for one, you're talking about adding almost $10 million in salary in one shot. Two, you're dealing with the full no trade for Braden Schenn, which I think complicates things quite a bit. I think it would have to take a pretty special circumstance in order to get him to waive. And it's not that they wouldn't like to be together again and be teammates, but they've already done that once. They did it in Philadelphia for 3.5 years. And, do you really want to uproot both of your families in order to make that happen? Luke has less control in order to do it because he doesn't have any trade protection, as you pointed out. I think it's certainly possible that one of them gets moved. I don't think it's likely that both get moved, although Braden Schenn does transform to a 15-team no trade when it comes to the summer. So if they wanted to try and force something, I guess the threat from the Blues would be, hey, if you don't waive now, we'll just wait and we'll get you in the summer when you have less control. So I don't know that Doug Armstrong is going to turn up the heat on his captain like that. I think it would have to be a pretty special move in order to want to do that based on the message that it sends to everyone else. That said, huge congratulations to Braden Schenn on hitting that 1,000 game milestone, and Luke obviously earlier in the season. It's, both of them have totally different stories, different paths, and really cool that earlier in the year when Luke hit 1,000, Braden flew after a game on a private jet to show up at Luke's party and surprised him and his entire family. I don't think Luke's going to get to return the favor tonight because the Preds are also in action tonight, but nonetheless, pretty special moment for the Schenn boys.
Yeah, really, really cool. Just quickly on Braden Schenn, there's a part of me, and I heard some of the reports that, hey, the Blues might want the equivalent of 2 first-round picks, like a first and a really good prospect move on from Braden Schenn. And listen, he is a winner, he's a leader, all of that stuff. Does it feel like maybe it's a bit of you're paying for the name value here of Braden Schenn? Like I sit there and I hear, we've talked about the Flyers saying they'd move Scott Laughton, or we've said, a move could happen if someone offers up a first-round pick for Scott Laughton. I think Scott Laughton is the better, cheaper player. And if you don't have to give up as much,
chance.
No,
you're out to lunch on that. With all due respect to Scott Laughton, fine player, not a needle mover. Braden Schenn could be a needle mover for a team. He's a guy that drags you into the fight, and just point production wise, we're talking about 2x Scott Laughton.
Not this season.
Not this season.
With Braden Schenn being 33, is it not fair to sit there and go, his best days are behind him?
Scott Laughton is in 23, so no. I think okay. Scott Laughton is a nice complementary piece. Braden Schenn could be a driver.
All right. Let's talk about the latest trade or the deadline countdown article over at dailyfaceoff.com. Frank, today it's all about Brock Boeser, the Canucks winger, who is reportedly frustrated that extension talks really haven't begun or aren't carrying along at all. And again, the Canucks, they never like to sit still. It's hard to imagine a world where they just let Brock Boeser walk all the way to free agency and don't get anything for him. So the cap hits high for Brock Boeser. He comes with the 10-team no trade list as well. But what do you make around the market for him? I know the teams that we had listed over on the site as potential fits include the Avalanche, the Kings, the Devils, and the Golden Knights. One of these stand out as a better fit for you than the others?
I mean, I think the Kings would be a great fit. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Kings are a team that make a splash between now and next Friday. I think after 3 first-round exits that they've got to change it up. They've got to do something a little bit different. I don't think for a second that Quentin Byfield is actually available. I mean, you could plug Brock Boeser in on any of those teams. I also think New Jersey could use that secondary scoring punch that could be really valuable. And so, look, I think when you size all these teams up, there's a reason why this list is relatively short. It's a 665 cap hit, and it's something that they'd really have to dig in on. But here's the other point that I'd make about Brock Boeser is I'm not 100% convinced, one, that a deal doesn't get done between now and next Friday. I think he expressed his interest and loyalty in remaining a Canuck yesterday or the day before with Ian McIntyre at Sportsnet. And I wouldn't be all that shocked if they didn't have a deal done, if Vancouver kept him and then continued to push to get one after. I think the big sticking point here is going to be term. He's probably going to want something in the $5 to $6 million range. But the reason why I'd be hopeful that the Canucks could still get a deal done is because he's already making 665. It's not a huge reach cap wise to get to that 8.5-ish range that you would think would be in the ballpark to get a deal done. So I'm not closing the door on, by any stretch, Brock Boeser continuing to remain a Canuck.
Interesting. The one team that wasn't on our list that I kind of wanted to talk about is as being a potential fit, and again, geographically, this gets connected a lot. But we've heard so much about Minnesota and Brock Nelson. But wouldn't Brock Boeser be an interesting fit in Mini? Let's say they can't get the center that they want. They probably need to add some scoring help somewhere. Boeser would be a decent fit there. I know with the Eriksson Ek injury, there's maybe some more pressure on, like, you should go get a center. Don't go get another winger. You got some wingers. But what do you make about the idea of Boeser in Minnesota?
I understand the connection, obviously, but I don't think Minnesota is one piece away this year. And obviously the standpoint would be to try and get him and keep him for the future and re-sign him. I also don't know that they necessarily need a winger. I think they have to focus their attention on a center and getting one that's an impact guy. And the other added layer to the Minnesota conversation is, how long is Kirill Kaprizov out? I don't have any particulars or specifics, but what I'm hearing behind the scenes isn't great, and he may be out for a while.
Wow. Which could, obviously change their deadline plans quite drastically. Let's move along our deadline countdown article. Yesterday, Frank, was all about the teams north of the border. And I found it funny, again, to bring it back to the Canucks, I suppose, when we wrote sellers or buyers. Like, who knows what the Canucks are doing? They're kind of the one big question mark in all this, because they could move off from a guy like Brock Boeser. But we also know that front office never shies away from an opportunity to add to their team, like they did with Marcus Pettersson a few weeks ago. The Flames are an interesting one, though. Long-term buyers. If any team I think is really going to stun us out of the group of 7, I think it's the Flames, isn't it?
No, I don't think the Flames do much of anything over the next 8 days. Will they be calling about trying to get some of those top end younger pieces? Yes. But do they have the pieces to get them? I think the answer is no. And beyond that, maybe the one surprise would be that Calgary buys on some cheap, inexpensive rentals in the last hour or two or on deadline day itself, that, hey, maybe these guys could help push us and get us into the playoffs, provide just a little bit of help for our team that's been grinding it out all year. But I don't think they have any shock value in them.
So you don't think there's like the Dylan Cousins, whoever with term deal coming?
No. Who are they trading to get Dylan Cousins? Like, they would have already done it. They would have offered up almost anyone on their roster.
Yeah, I mean, they have extra first-round picks this year and next year if they wanted to
That's
do
not
something
what
like that.
Buffalo wants.
Fair. Out of the buyers, Edmonton, Ottawa, and Toronto being the three that we have listed here. We just kind of talked about Ottawa's got a handful of issues. And yesterday, Edmonton's got a couple of spots. Toronto, we know they're looking for forward help. Do you think any of these GMs get crazy busy? Like if I set a line that was 2.5, do any of them go over 2.5 trades or players brought in, I should say?
I could see Toronto being in that spot. Yeah, I think they could plug a few different holes. I think they've got some optionality with some picks. They've got some prospects that they could move that other teams are intrigued by. Yeah, I would say of those teams, I mean, Ottawa could bring in multiple pieces, but I would have to signal Toronto. Go back to the conversation that we've had all week, which is the Eastern Conference is wide open. If you're going to, that's what Toronto worked themselves into a few years ago in the Northern Division. If we're going to take the bat off the shoulder, let's take a swing. Unfortunately, the guy they ended up with was Nick Foligno with a bad back at the time.
Yeah. And again, it goes back to the line that you've been using, and I love it. When press conferences or when Stanley Cup's not press conferences, like don't just do something for the sake of it, but if the fit's out there and the margins are razor thin in the East, if the fit's out there, swing a little bit and go get your guy.
And I wouldn't be shocked at all to see Toronto be one of those teams in real short order to circle in on Scott Lawton, get the center position settled first, then have fun with the rest of it.
Have fun with the rest of it. I like that. Let's get along to our big segment for the day. It's brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers, proudly Canadian owned and operated since 1972. And you can get a custom ring built and delivered in less than 4 weeks with the Charm Masterpiece program. It all comes with their unbeatable pricing policy. For more information, go to charmdiamondcenters.com. Jesse Montano covers the Colorado Avalanche for Guerrilla Sports. Always love having you on the show, Jesse. And last night, another win for the Avalanche and 3 assists for Martin Necas. And when they made this move, I remember the media veils with Nathan MacKinnon and Jared Bednar, and it seemed spicy. It seemed tense. Has Necas's play and how well he's fit in, has that kind of smoothed things over there a little bit?
Yeah, no, good to see you boys again this morning. It smoothed everything over. 12 points in 11 games. And what's been so interesting to watch, look, we all know what an elite goal scorer Mikko Rantanen is, despite the slow start in Carolina, and how well he played next to Nathan MacKinnon. Marty Necas has just brought a different dynamic to that line. Part of it is the speed and the fact that you have another guy out there who can be a kind of a one-man zone entry, just like Nathan MacKinnon. But maybe the underrated part of it is the fact that Nathan MacKinnon's playing with another righty, which if you go back through most of his NHL career, he has not done that. He's played almost exclusively with lefties. And I think Marty Necas having that right-hand shot, it's forced Nathan MacKinnon out of his comfort zone a little bit. It's forced him out of playing on that left wall, kind of hanging out, waiting for that shot. It's forcing him to move. And he actually even talked to us a little bit about that last night. But no, look, we're seeing what GM Chris McFarland and Joe Sakic kind of envisioned when they made this move is we think Marty Necas is a good enough player that we can put him next to Nathan MacKinnon and it's going to elevate him to a different level. So far, that's what we've seen. And I think, given the magnitude of the trade right now on Colorado's side, it's hard to picture this having gone much better than it has to this point.
Maybe anyone would be good playing with Nathan MacKinnon. I say that totally tongue in cheek, but you see the production, you're like, holy smokes. I wanted to ask you, Jesse, about another piece of the trade that was way less talked about at the time and still to this point. But I think Carolina wasn't that keen on giving up on him. How has Jack Drury been?
Look, obviously got off to a quicker start and he's settled in a little bit more, but he's done exactly what Chris McFarland was hoping he'd do and provide some depth, in the bottom part of the lineup. And he's immediately become one of their better faceoff guys. He's killing penalties. So like I said, he scored, I think it was 2 goals, 3 points in his first 3 games. And so, he's not necessarily producing at that same level. But look, when they made this move, Chris McFarland said, our team isn't deep enough. We're not deep enough to get where we want to go. And that was part of what this move was about. And look, I think they've been happy with Jack Drury and he's given them some real stability in that 3C spot. Like you said, I don't think Carolina wanted to move on from him. And that's maybe an underrated part of this deal as a guy that can be here for a while. He's a Jared Bednar type guy. We use that phrase a lot out here. Works hard, goes to the dirty areas, but has enough skill to get involved. So no, Jack Drury's been a nice fit and he's really helped, bolster that third line and give him a little bit of consistency there in the bottom 6.
Okay. So you talked about Chris McFarland mentioning that they need to get deeper. Yep. Now, as we get 8 days away from the deadline. They've got some cap space. I'd imagine at this point, I don't know how you wouldn't be able to spend the Landeskog LTIR money because he hasn't been able to even string together a full week of practice yet consecutively. So where do they go? What do they do?
Yeah, I'm with you on the Gabe Landeskog stuff, and not to mention, like, that's a guy that you'd want to get into games for a week or two before you even make any decisions. So yeah, they have to use that money, and I think there's even a couple guys they're potentially looking at moving out to help make some money work. One is Casey Middlestat. If you can find what you think is a clear upgrade at 2C, look, I don't think they necessarily want to give up on Casey Middlestat. He's shown flashes here in Colorado of being a really good player and a player that can fit into the system. But look, he just hasn't met expectations this season, and it's gone on a little bit too long. So that's one that I think they are looking at. Can we upgrade at 2C? I do think they're potentially looking to add some more offensive depth, and I also think Miles Wood might be a guy that could be on the way out. He makes 2.5 as a way for them to clear up some cap space. What I primarily think they are looking at as the priority is adding a top 4 defenseman. With the current cap flexibility that they have. Josh Manson has struggled all season with a hand injury and just has not been the same.
And then third pair, man, has been tough.
It's been really tough. It's been really tough. Sam Malinsky, rookie this year, had a really good camp and had a really good first 6 to 8 weeks of the NHL season. And his game has just really taken a dip, and he's fought to come back from that. Calvin DeHaan, Oliver Shillington, Keaton Middleton.
One thing after another.
Right. It's been a revolving door on that bottom pair of not good enough. So I think, look, I also think Josh Manson could be in play here to be moved out if you feel you can get an upgrade. But I think the preference would be to get a player that you think can play every single night next to Sam Girard and actually slide Josh Manson down to that third pair.
That would be ideal.
That'd be ideal to provide some stability there. Now, here's the one thing I will say, though. I've been keeping an eye on all the names that are out there, right? All the names that people are talking about. That is not typically where Chris McFarland goes shopping. It's typically a little bit off the beaten path. And Frank, you probably know this better than I do. They are so hard to get information out of. They're so hard to see where the Avs front office is leaning. So I do think, look, they've had some interest in Seth Jones. They've had conversations about Seth Jones this year. That's going to be tough to make the money work unless you get a Chicago or even an additional team to eat some of that money.
Yeah. I don't think, just FYI, I don't think another team is going to be willing to eat money, even if it's a small amount, because it's for so long.
Right, exactly. You got the term on it in addition to the amount that it is. So I don't think that necessarily works here. So I'm expecting that if they make a move on that back end, it's probably going to be something that not a lot of people are talking about, that Chris McFarland is going to say, we think this helps improve our team right now and gives us a better shot to win in June. But that is definitely the priority. But if they can't make a huge splash there, I do think they're going to bolster that depth up front.
Jesse, what a tease. Come on, you got to give us a name. Who would be an off the radar guy that you've been thinking of in the back of your head that you go, oh, that makes sense?
Well, and I don't necessarily know if this guy's super off the radar, but the one that I keep coming back to is Mario Ferraro, and I've seen him on some lists out there. Yeah. He's a guy that played at UMass with Cale Makar. He's still got, I believe, 1 or 2 years left on his deal at a decent number. That's a name that I just keep coming back to. And like I said, I've seen his name out there a little bit, so that's not completely off the radar.
I think the Sharks would move him in a heartbeat, FYI. I don't think they'd hesitate for 1 second if they got the right deal.
And the Avs have made multiple moves with the Sharks in the last couple of years. There's clearly a working relationship there between these front offices. And like I said, he captained a UMass team that Cale Makar was on. So there's some familiarity there. That's the name that I keep coming back to.
Good one.
3.25 million, 1 more year after this one, kind of checks a lot of boxes. That makes a lot of sense.
They wouldn't even need to move out any money.
No, you could make it work. You can make it work right now. And then, that would give you the option to, move some money on a move that would help bolster your forward depth. So Mario Ferraro is a guy on my radar. We'll keep an eye out though and see what Chris McFarland and Joe Sakic have up their sleeve.
You can find his work over at Guerrilla Sports. Jesse, always appreciate your time, man. Thanks for doing this.
Love chatting with you boys. See you later.
Moving along toward
best guest that we have all year.
Pardon?
I said no joke. Jesse is one of the best guests we have all year on the show.
Oh, Yeah, he is unbelievable. The stuff they do at Guerrilla Sports is so good. Can't recommend going and giving them a follow enough. Frank, Daily Faceoff inbox question, hashtag Ask DFO. This one comes in from Christopher Palmer. Where is Columbus looking to add to reward their team? Another spot where maybe, Frank, they're looking for like longer term pieces. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. I think they'd also be in that Calgary swimming pool of like, hey, is there something left toward the end of the day that we don't have to spend a lot on that just is like a morale boost of like, hey guys, there's reinforcements coming. I would think down the middle, Boone Jenner coming back is an indication of how thin things have been down the middle. They desperately need solid center play. And then on the back end, Eric Branson getting closer. He's skating again. He hasn't played in months upon months. Any support that you could provide there as well, those would be the two positions I'd look at.
Yeah. Let's move along to our daily bets brought to you by Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Couple of plays I like this evening. I like Minnesota to beat Utah. I know they're missing Kirill Kaprizov and Joel Eriksson, but the Minnesota Wild have actually been a pretty solid road team. One of the better road teams in the NHL, 21-7-3 this season. And Utah's been awful on home ice this year. It's something I've targeted a handful of times with these bets. And again, no Kaprizov, no Eriksson, that sucks. It definitely hinders Minnesota, but I still think they have a pretty good shot here. And I like them as very, very juicy road dogs. Again, great road team, very poor home team. Give me Minnesota in this one. And Alex Ovechkin's shot prop. I'm just not going to stop betting it, honestly, until he breaks the record. We even saw last game against Calgary. He was at 2 shots basically until like the last 5 minutes. And then bing, bing, bing. Fires 3 on net. You got 5. Crushed the over. Ovi to get 4+ shots on goal. He's hit this in 4 straight. And Frank, an interesting one tonight as they take on the Blues. Joel Hofer's going to get the start for St. Louis. Fresh meat. Ovi hasn't scored on him in his career.
What would that be? 182 goalies?
Believe so. So, I mean, come on. Ovi with a shot to beat another goalie for the first time. He'll be ripping the puck.
So the crazy part about that stat, I read this the other day, is that Ovechkin has scored on 80% of the goalies that the Caps have faced in his tenure. 80%.
So, like,
I mean, I guess if you think about it, like if they get multiple cracks at them, like makes sense. But man, what a unbelievable record that is.
Yeah, like I was just thinking all the random one-off goalies you would have faced throughout your career.
Oh
like
God, the list is so cool. Like it's guys that you like, oh my God, I haven't thought about that guy in 20 years.
Yeah. Let's wrap up the show, Frank. A little bit of garbage time. John Scott, always known for getting people going with a viral tweet. And he sent this out and had everybody chiming in. Who's an NHL player with 0 haters, Frank? I got a couple in my mind. Who jumped out first for you?
First one for me is Marc-Andre Fleury. I can't think of one person who has ever said a negative thing about Marc-Andre Fleury ever and meant it. I mean, I gentleman, Hall of Fame goalie, Stanley Cup winner, like everything that you could possibly check, he's got it. And he's just so well liked by his teammates, by media, by, his executives. Like, is there anyone that Marc-Andre Fleury has ever not gotten along with? I'd like to meet them because you are one of one.
Yeah, that's a great pick. I went with Alexander Barkov. For a guy who plays as hard as he does and is such a, pain in the ass defensively to play against. I can't think of a fan base that, an opposing fan base who's like, I hate Alexander Barkov.
Well, they should, because he torches them most nights. But I'm just glad that we've gotten way past the point where, like, for every year when they did a poll, it'd be like, who's the most underrated player in the league? And you're like, all right, dude, you can't be voted that 4 years in a row and still be underrated. That's not how this works. So he's gotten his props. He's gotten his cup ring. He's gotten his money now. He cemented himself as one of the best players of his generation. Good pick. There's plenty of other, like Nick Lidstrom is a great one from back in the day. You ever hear anyone say anything bad about Mr. Perfect?
Pavel Datsyuk as well was one that popped into my head. He won a bunch of Lady Bings, but the only people who hated Datsyuk were probably just goalies.
Yeah. Anyone that he tormented.
Exactly. Tomorrow on the show, more
let's
deadline
reverse this tomorrow. We're going to go with most hated players, guys that everyone hated.
I got a list, Frank. Tomorrow we'll talk deadline. We'll get ready for the Stadium Series, which is a massive game as well. We'll have our Stanley Cup inner circle, outer circle, because it's the end of another month as we creep closer to the NHL trade deadline. That is a wrap on a February 27th edition of the show. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button before you go, and tune in again tomorrow, noon Eastern, right here for another edition of Daily Faceoff Live. What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you're going to want to hit the subscribe button to not miss any of our content, from daily live shows with Frank Seravalli to analysis from former NHLers to exclusive interviews with some of the biggest names in the hockey world on Frankly Speaking. You're going to want to hit that subscribe button and stay up to date with everything going on in the hockey world.